thank you all to this panel. Before I have Senator Mastriano introduce the next 15-minute panel, I want to note that we've also been joined on Zoom by Representative Kathy Rapp from Northwestern Pennsylvania. Doug?
Thank you, panelists. If you can stay in the area, we're going to bring up the next group here. We're going to save questions and answers for the end. Mr. Mayor, I understand my list might not be synchronized. I'm going to ask you to introduce the next folks coming up to testify. If you could pass the mic to the mayor, somebody. Thank you, Walt.
We could call up four more witnesses like this, or we could now put on the statistical expert who could explain some of this, and then put on the additional witness. Either way you prefer. Okay, then we'll call Colonel Waldron. And if you don't mind, if I can interrupt and ask him a few questions, I can probably get it directed. It's good for me to do that because I don't understand it, so. I'm only kidding. Colonel, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Senator, Colonel, and gentlemen, ladies. My name is Phil Waldron. I'm a retired Army Colonel, 30 years. Spent the first half of my career just like Colonel Mastriano here as a cavalry officer conducting armed reconnaissance, counter-reconnaissance. Last half of my career spent in information warfare as a psychological operations officer and information operations officer, conducted computer network operations, electronic warfare, special electronic warfare, deception, counter-deception, and OPSEC, and a couple other specialties.
Sir, sorry.
You still got a Stetson in Spurs. So I spent all of my time as an operations officer. My perspective looking at this this problem set is how to break in, how to break it, how to destroy it, how to manipulate it. And my team has been researching this specific issue since August, but we're working with another team that's been intently working on this problem set, the voting machine manipulation, for 2 years, since the Ted Cruz and Beto race in Texas in 2018 and the Kentucky governor's race, where there were significant anomalies observed. And I'd like to add that there are many, many more teams like ours, small teams that have joined in this fight, and they're throwing the flag left and right. So there's a lot of folks who are recognizing anomalies. The voting systems in the U.S. And in Pennsylvania were built to be manipulated. They've been used in elections around the world and stolen elections around the world in Venezuela, Italy, Argentina, Singapore, Bolivia as close as 2 weeks ago. The Philadelphia uses ES&S, Pittsburgh uses Dominion, other counties in Pennsylvania use Dominion and other systems. So what's the real deal? So all of these election systems have a common DNA. SGO Smartmatic sold Sequoia voting systems to Dominion in 2010, and then the Diebold company spun off Premier Election Systems to Dominion as a result of an antitrust suit. So the bottom line is that these systems have similar code and similar functions. And just so you know, I know there have been statements to the contrary, but I personally debriefed the son of a Cuban intelligence officer who had firsthand knowledge of Hugo Chavez's family members who told him not to worry about the populist threat against Maduro's election in Venezuela, quote unquote, that it was guaranteed. Their father invested the money to build the SGO voting machine system. So I have no reason to doubt this gentleman. He's sworn an affidavit to this effect. But that's the root of the SGO voting machines. So these systems are not what you've been told. They are connected to the internet and servers outside of the U.S. They're connected from top to the bottom in the middle. There is no transparency, as our previous witnesses mentioned, as to how the voter information is processed, how and where it's stored. The voting record is able to be modified and or deleted by operators, administrators, and outside threats. Operators can assign votes for write-in ballots, blank ballots, or error ballots in large numbers so that they can be directed toward one candidate or another at the operator's or supervisor's discretion. And many experts have published how easily these machines can be hacked to manipulate votes. As a matter of fact, one of our white hat hackers previously discovered a malware that's present on the servers that captures every login and every password of every operator down to the precinct level that logs into one of these systems. That's just like giving the password to your bank account out, putting it on the dark web. It's not going to be there very long. And just so you probably are all aware, on 30 September, an election storage facility was robbed in your state. 30 USB devices were stolen and a laptop. Those USB devices more than likely had encryption devices, and you've just heard another previous witness talk about the non-standard use of the USB storage devices. So these systems, in a nutshell, allow authorized and unauthorized users to cancel votes, shift votes, preload votes, vote blank ballots, all in real time and in large numbers. They're connected from the top to the bottom. So one bad actor or a team of bad actors can have equally negative inputs. It's been described by another person in another state that we're working with, just like the lotto. Whoever organizes the lotto is always going to win. It's controlling the numbers and it's controlling the margins. Our experts and other academics believe that up to 1.2 million Pennsylvania votes could have been altered or fraudulent. This is what we discovered in the last 22 days. Really, only a detailed forensic analysis of the actual machines and software will truly show how many Pennsylvania citizens have had their civil rights violated. So to use these type of machines with little or no audit trails, little or no transparency of how the votes are processed, where they go, where they're stored, will never leave the public satisfied that we truly have a representative democracy. I'd like to correct something the mayor said. I am not a statistician. I'm a combat officer and didn't do well in math. But I can understand the numbers that he put out earlier. Want to share with you one chart. I believe it's in your package. So what our team has done is focused on the spike anomalies, and these are events where a numerical amount of votes are processed in a time period that's not feasible or mechanically possible under normal circumstances. I believe Greg Stenstrom mentioned earlier the processing of these ballots through machines. There's a manufacturer specified rate of speed that a number of ballots can be imaged and processed. These spike anomalies in this chart really show where for us to look forensically to actually determine what happened with these votes. Our team has looked at these systems, and there are a dozen ways to interdict the voting process in these issues, whether it's mail-in ballot manipulations. They can scan and allocate votes, blank votes, whether it was the 70,000 votes left in the back room. There's just lots of ways to interdict these systems. So with that, I'll answer any potential questions.
Thank you. Next panel, please.
Could I just
Yes, sir.
ask him to clarify one or two things? When we look at this Pennsylvania fixing the vote chart that they all have, could you explain at the very beginning what that line means, Biden injection?
So at the very beginning of the chart, where there's a circle, it says on election day. What that indicates is there is a spike in loaded votes, 337,000 plus or minus some votes that were added in there in one big batch. So that was an anomaly in the reporting. Normally you would expect to see a smooth curve going up, not any big spikes. That's kind of what Greg was talking about, the anomalies of loading and uploading those votes. So that big spike that occurs there is a prime indicator of fraudulent voting.
And that's 604,000 votes in 90 minutes, is that right?
Correct. This is 337 votes, 337,000 votes in that.
In that period of time?
Yes.
And when you look at this entire curve with all these spikes, can you calculate how much of a vote that accounted for Biden and how much for Trump?
Close to 600,000. I think our figures are about 570 some odd thousand that all those spikes represent over time.
For Biden?
Correct.
And how much for Trump?
I think it was a little over 3,200.
How about that? Now, just to go back to your original document, this one pager that they all have. Mail-in ballots counted without being observed. Those are the ballots we were talking about that were not observed in Allegheny County and in Philadelphia.
Correct.
Is that right? 682,770. Now, this is the part that is a mystery. Mailed ballots sent out, 1,823,148. But when you go to the count of the final count of the vote, there are 2,589,242 mail-in ballots. What happened? How do you account for the 700,000 mail-in ballots that appeared from nowhere?
So our cyber team uses white hat hacking techniques. They gather a lot of publicly available information, and that information was from the Secretary of State's website. That website has been updated as late as 11/16 this morning with provisional and mail-in ballots, so those numbers are still changing. They changed last night, so it's a continual target.
This is 22 days after the election.
That number, the 2.5 million number is no longer on the website.
Just been taken off?
It's not there anymore.
Is there any explanation for why it's been taken off?
There was no annotations.
But has there been a change made in the 2,589,242 mail-in votes that have been counted in the total vote?
I'd have to check the Secretary of State's website as of.
And could you also
after
check and see,
11/16.
is there any change in the 1,823,148 ballots that were sent out?
The mailed-out ballots number seems to be holding steady.
And was there any other method of producing ballots other than sending them out?
Not that we're aware of, unless as previous witnesses have testified that the potential for multiple ballot counts. So ballots could have been
And have you ever
counted
gotten a
twice.
chance to examine any of these ballots?
No, that would be part of the forensic process. One suggestion, whoever does the analysis is using paper and ink analysis with a micro photo spectrometer. That would analyze the ink on those ballots to see if they were mass produced.
So in addition to the 682,770 ballots that were entered without a single inspection of any kind, there also appear to be something like 700,000 ballots, mail-in ballots, that were never sent out, that were counted.
There are noted discrepancies in the
That's a
Secretary of State's
pretty big
report.
discrepancy.
Yes, sir.
And that's been there.
Thank you. We do have to press on to the next panel since we have a lot of questions pending here. Mr. Mayor, could you introduce
Sure.
the next panelists?
So now we have Jane Winters, Gary Feldman, who's going to be on a Zoom. Is he here? Well, then have him come up.
Yeah, please come up as you're called.
I believe Charles Nudo, N-U-D-O, and David Shestakis. I think I have them all. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll start with the men physically in the room here with your testimony, and then go to the Zoom after that. So please.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Gary Feldman. I am a resident and voter of Philadelphia City and County. I'm registered as a Republican. I have been involved with Philadelphia Republican politics for over 20 years now. I've had watcher certificates, and on this past November 3rd, 2020, I was issued a watcher certificate to be the watcher for President Donald Trump. This is the watcher certificate that I was given, and it is issued for President Donald Trump to me. These watcher certificates, I'm not sure the exact year, I'm going to say about 2002 or 2003, are now for county-wide. So everywhere in the county, the watcher certificate is good for. So Philadelphia is city and county, so this watcher certificate, which reads, this certificate authorized the individual to watch in any ward or division in Philadelphia. And that's what the top line. If you want to see the watcher certificate, I'll gladly bring it up. So anyway, I was in my vehicle as kind of like volunteering for the president with an attorney, and he was monitoring any kind of problems that could happen in Philadelphia. His name was Will Chamberlain, and he was pretty good on Twitter and other social media stuff. So we got a word that they were not letting Republican watchers in the polling places in South Philly. So we went to a place which happened to be a funeral parlor where they were doing the election, and I walked in with the watcher certificate in both hands to make sure that they wouldn't snag it out of my hand. They immediately wanted me to identify myself. One of the problems that happens is the Republican watcher certificates are this gold-orange color, where the Democrats are like a light blue. I've never really seen one, but I heard they're light blue. So they know right away that we're Republicans coming in there to watch. So two poll workers, I don't know who they were wearing masks and everything. I produced a certificate, and she starts saying it's not good here. And I'm like, it is. And I said, please read the top line. The gentleman that was with her said, would you like to go outside and talk about this? You know, I was not looking for a confrontation. And the other thing is, too, is I did have my bandana on. They had their face shield, but they weren't practicing social distancing. They were right on top of me. So we did step outside because he wanted to step outside. Will Chamberlain is not a Philadelphia resident, so he's not issued a Philadelphia watcher certificate. And he proceeded to take a video of me having a confrontation on the street with these two, I don't know who they were. I don't know if they were poll workers. You know, they never identified who they were. The video, which was released to the public, is a little over 30 seconds on Twitter, and it already has 3.8 million hits on Will's Twitter page. There is a complete video, and it's on my phone, and I know I did made it available to the senators. It's over a minute about what happened on the street. I tried to explain this watcher certificate is for the city of Philadelphia. You're in the city of Philadelphia, and you have to let me observe. I'm the eyes and ears of the President of the United States, and they wouldn't allow that.
Thank you for the opportunity to be, excuse me, be here today. Oh, sir.
Yeah, I just want to add another thing that's really kind of crucial. When this happened, the fact checkers group or organization, I don't even know what they are, started to put disclaimers on the video. Fact checkers said they contacted me. Fact checkers never contacted me. Fact checkers said that it was a misunderstanding. They said that the commissioner's office tried contacting me. They used the name Kevin Feely from the commissioner's office. I don't know who Kevin Feely is. Nobody from fact checkers called me. I don't even know if they have my phone number. And the commissioner's office did nothing to follow up on any of this. I did see Commissioner Al Schmidt when we were doing the canvassing, but we didn't mention anything about what happened that day.
Good afternoon. I'm Dave Shostokis. I'm an attorney, licensed to practice law in Illinois and Florida. Some time ago, I was a Cook County Assistant State's Attorney prosecutor, and during that time, I actually did election law enforcement during the course of that time, including seeing to it that people had appropriate access, precinct openings and closings, that machines were zeroed out. Since that time, I've either been a candidate or a campaign in over 10 other individual elections. And in 2016, I actually worked as a volunteer for the Trump-Rubio campaign in Broward County, Florida. Discovered them opening mail-in ballots in a locked room. Before that was all said and done, we actually had a Broward County judge monitoring everybody's access. He was actually on site monitoring everybody's access to see to it that that could happen, see to it that everybody would have appropriate access. Currently, I am lead counsel in conjunction with Judicial Watch in a suit called Illinois Conservative Union versus the Illinois State Board of Elections for violations of the board in terms of the National Voter Registration Act. Given that kind of background to give you some idea of where I'm coming from on this subject. On October 24th this year, I came to Pittsburgh as a volunteer with Lawyers for Trump, and I was asked to organize folks to do monitoring of the pre-canvass activities during the course of the next week. About myself with some other volunteers made over 500 phone calls. We recruited 50 individuals that were willing to come and canvass or come and monitor the pre-canvass, and along with 25 other out-of-state lawyer volunteers. We had organized all this because, of course, we had 19 in Allegheny County. There were 19 Republicans on the ballot, and so we were able to have credentials through the RCAC for 19 watchers at any given moment. So we had to organize them. So we organized everybody during the course of time, and they had given us credentials in advance. And then 2 days before the election, the Friday before the election, we got a call from the Electoral Board and said, oh, by the way, you need to submit everybody's credentials in advance, and you need to have everybody's signatures on the credentials that you sign in advance. And, of course, we'd already had put together a team of 70. We'd allocated them 4 hours a time in 4-hour shifts to be able to monitor through the course of the whole period of time. And then over the next 3 days, we scrambled like heck to try and get signatures from the various volunteers and other counsel that were assisting us. Needless to say, we lost about 25 folks that we were unable to get the credentials to in advance and get the signatures back and forth and all the things necessary to do that. So I wanted to mention that you're hearing about huge global issues, but it goes down to the petty as well. It goes down to the petty as well in terms of interfering with his access and interfering with changing rules. I know Secretary Bookvar changed some huge rules, but the local boards, day in and day out, were changing rules as well to make the monitoring process next to impossible. At any rate, we did that, and then we wound up. I went with a group at about 6:45 on Election Day to 901 Pennsylvania Avenue in Allegheny County, where they were doing the pre-canvass. And at the time when we arrived, we were herded into what's best known as the corral. I'm sure you've kind of seen or heard about those things. It was a fenced-in area. The fence was maybe 2.5, 3 feet high. Closest anybody could get to make any observations was maybe 15, 20 feet from the closest ballot processor to the maybe 150 feet, because we were in about a 20,000 square foot area where the biggest room was taking place. Biggest activity was taking place. But I would mention that the mail-in ballots were coming into that room already sliced open at the top. We have no idea when or where the slicing took place, where the opening took place, or what was in fact inside those ballots, inside those mail-in envelopes. At that point in time, folks were then separating the mail-in ballot from the secrecy envelope. You could see that, you know, that's exactly what they're doing. They put one on the side and one on the other side. And then they take them and put them someplace, and I have no idea. And then the secrecy envelopes would go to another slicing machine, and that'd be sliced open. And at that point, then the ballots would come back, and they'd be divided from the secrecy envelopes. We had really no concept of what was going on. In the room next door, there was a smaller room around the corner that you had to leave the 20,000 square foot room. There was one about 7,500 square feet. And in that room, there was a machine, and the machine would be apparently sorting things by the barcodes. And then eventually, somehow or other, people would come in with big armloads of ballots from the other room. Apparently with no provenance, no explanation of where they came from. And here's an interesting thing that you guys might consider when you're doing this in the future. One of the biggest bottlenecks would take place at this point in time, because all these ballots came in folded, tri-folded, right? And all the ballots had to be flattened. And so they would take the ballots and put them under big stacks of reams and reams of paper to flatten them out, and then there'd be workers kneading the ballots to try and make them so that they could go through the machines. And when everybody's saying, well, you haven't counted anything for X number of hours, and they said, well, we're trying to flatten the ballots. It was absurd and obscene. So at any rate, that was and when everybody was waiting, that's what was going on. They're flattening the ballots for most part. And then there was about 6 machines where they were feeding the ballots. And while they had 6 machines feeding the ballots, as they would go in, 2 or 3 would kick out to a different tray than the other tray. And workers sometimes would take the ones that weren't kicked out and put them in a stack, and then sometimes you'd run all of them through again, and sometimes run 2 or 3. We never had any idea if they were zeroing out a machine, what they were doing. I asked the solicitor, the county solicitor who was there. I said, "What's going on?" He told me that this was a Pitney Bowes representative working there that had been sworn in as a county representative, and that sometimes the ballot machine doesn't count those things, and then so he runs them through and zip. But there was absolutely no provenance to what was going on in the counting machines. I have no idea, because of course they would just take stacks of ballots that had been sitting under reams of paper trying to be flattened, and then run them through the machine. So we have no idea about that. And so at one point I asked the county solicitor, I said, can you describe for me the journey of a ballot from the time it hits the door to the time that it's counted? Where does it go? What's the process, et cetera? I had a short answer: no. I then asked him, I said, can you give me any written protocol about what is supposed to happen? It hits the door, then it goes to a machine theoretically sorted by barcodes, from what I understood from someone else, so that if there's a challenge in advance of the election, they know where to look, because of course at 5 p.m. on the Friday before elections, you can challenge things for people having died and a few other reasons. And but then I asked, is there any written protocol for that? And he said, no, we have no written protocol for what we're conducting, what we're doing here. So he answered, he's supposed to be the one giving legal advice to people on how to legally handle ballots. And he tells me that he doesn't know how they're handled, and he tells me that there is no written protocol on how they are supposed to be handled. So I might suggest that there was just literally no way to change. I mean, there was no way to challenge. There was no way to look at those ballots. And I would say, in my experience, electoral experience, one of the things that legitimizes elections is the ability of not a disinterested third party to review what the process is, but actually an adversarial third party to review what the process is. And this was completely and utterly absent. I had about 25 other affidavits from other folks that had joined me during the time that had been part of this that describe essentially the same thing over there in Allegheny County. Most of whom were attorneys and had been versed on the comings and goings of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which I might suggest ultimately the last decision in Ray canvassing, when the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ultimately said that it doesn't matter how far you're away from the ballots because you don't have the right to challenge anything anyway. I read the opinion and I said to myself, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court just called off elections in the state of Pennsylvania. And I would suggest that the remedy for what the Pennsylvania Supreme Court does lies with the distinguished legislators that are before me. But the fact is if there is no opportunity for anybody to look at them, and the court has the temerity to say, it doesn't matter if you come in or not, it doesn't matter how far you are, because even if you're there, you don't have any right to do anything.
Sure. If you could summarize, sir, we are running out.
Yes, I'm sorry. I apologize for being an attorney. No, I apologize, Senator. But I just I'll summarize in one thing. One of the guarantees in the United States Constitution is that, in fact, every state shall have a Republican form of government. And I would suggest to you, if the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania determines that they're going to run the state and allow the local election authorities to essentially appoint winners, the state of Pennsylvania no longer meets that guarantee as a Republican form of government. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.